Funky Marketing Show, recording live from my mother's girl room. Let's call it like that. I'm in my hometown, recording the special episode with somebody who was born near here, so in Niš. Tamara Kitic Yarovoy will be my guest. We're going to talk about marketing and sales alignment, go to market, and all those nerdy stuff related to the B2B marketing, B2B tech. But before that, join me in dancing while we are listening to the funky intro, and then we go. And we're back. Tamara, welcome to the Funky Marketing Show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. And I like the little intro about Pirot and Niš being super close and announcing yes, and Nišlika coming from Niš here speaking English with you, although we can do Serbian, but we're just being polite.
Yeah, so give us kind of a perspective. So I said it all started in Niš, but you're now in the US working on some amazing stuff. So what happened in between? I know there's a story.
Story is right after high school, right? I moved really early. I moved to Belgrade for volleyball, right after elementary, and then back to Niš and prepping, and opportunity came around to go for college, to go to the United States and kind of still continue to play volleyball and get education, which I always liked. I always pushed school and volleyball in tandem. So yeah, that's really what happened. I just got a scholarship, moved to Houston, then bounce around, just to kind of have a clear state in here. We're speaking English, which is kind of funny because in 2008, so what's that, 14 years ago, I spoke zero English. So there was none of that. I remember, I went to junior college, to some who understand, junior college you go when you don't really have a good English. And then you go through 2 years of that JUCO, they call it, junior college. And then you go to a real university because now you kind of own the math was easy, but English portion of it for me was hard. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started. I studied marketing and international business. Marketing is a major and then layered on international business. Met my husband in the university, and then we started we kicked our professional careers back in Houston. And long story short, I was in Houston for a few years. Then we didn't really like it. When we went to San Diego, then I think in 2.5 years, we outgrew San Diego pretty quickly. We just wanted to grow professionally. And then the next thing that really made sense was San Francisco. Then San Francisco happened for a few years. Then COVID happened and we became parents. And in all of that mambo jumbo, we really didn't see San Francisco fitting for parents generally. And we were spoiled because San Diego is one of the best places in the States.
Mm-hmm.
I can be biased here, but I think a lot of people agree to this. So I'm just gonna kind of enforce the message. So we decided to move back, and here I am. Now I'm in San Diego doing all kinds of stuff, still in marketing, B2B, obviously. Very passionate about it, staying close to revenue. Really close to revenue. That's what I like to try the most. There's so many disciplines that in coming out of college that was it took me 6 or so years just to figure out what the hell do I like, because you have so much. It's an umbrella of things you can do within marketing, and what are you really good at and what you're not good at, and it takes time. So that's really
I like that what you said. So staying close to the revenue, because I think the best marketers actually always like to have revenue insights, because that's how you you can optimize your work and be somebody who is who doesn't take their work for granted, but they go to focus on results. And I think that the shift is happening, more and more marketers are thinking that way. But I wanted to ask you, because we talked before you got to Vena. You were actually talking with companies, finding the best fit for you. So what were some of the things that you saw over there that kind of got you interested in working for Vena? Because what I know looking at the US market, because we have here people from US listening to the podcast, UK, Germany, and Balkans. So
Yeah.
like I know that on the contrary from Europe and maybe Balkans, in the US, like all the roles are specialized, because like startup in Serbia in Balkans is like maybe 15 people. In the US, that's 150. So the scale is larger, and I think that is also something that brings the specialty into the roles. Because like if you go and you say marketing strategy, but marketing strategy in which domain,
Yes.
or that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I was very specific. I had a list. I knew where I'm good at, so I kind of matched with like the size of a company I want, and on top of that, like what within the company am I looking for. So the list went something like this. I might be missing some portions. Like I literally
Mm-hmm.
had like a checklist. One was I was really looking for a company like 500 employees and up. So not really under that. So which meant like okay, some technologies in, there's still room for improvement, but not like a startup world where you would kind of, it's rough, right? Like you have no foundation, you're building that up. I don't like building the foundation. I don't think I'm necessarily good at. It's slow. I don't like, negotiating with vendors, market, and that's boring to me. I like, give me like 60, 70% and let me pump it up to 90. That's one. And the second thing that where I really thrive is in G2 go-to-market motion, right? You have this area where companies kind of start leaning or thinking about scalability. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that portion because then it allows you have enough budget, you have enough resources to really like put the oil on the fire, what I call. So I was kind of like, when thinking about the new position, I was thinking about that holistically. But main things that came into mind is, does the company have a good product? So I would go like and check G2 Trust Radius, read about like how do we compare, how big is like that total addressable market? Like so you understand like if you come in and you want to drive revenue, how much room for revenue do you have right there? Then something that was very important, culture. So that was not a requirement prior to Vena. At Meltwater had a really cool gig, their culture, and everyone you talked to was so freaking amazing. And when I say like, why was that impactful, talking about company culture, imagine walking into a room with 12 executives and you make decision within 1 minute. And I'm like, looking left and right, like, is this really happening? Like all of them are on the same page and we're just going through agenda. And I'm like, how is this the case? And then you finally, like, that was my first day in Meltwater. I remember I had to that big meeting, 12 people, huge. And I'm just like, they just made the decision so quickly. There's no arguing. They're on board. What is happening here? And then I realized the answer to that was culture. So I put a lot of emphasis on culture in terms of like, you really want to like who you're working with, honestly. And then if everyone is on the same page, you make decisions across different functions super quickly. So I was like, okay, that means I as a marketer don't have to slow down, and I don't like to be slow. I'm like, decisions flying around, let's just go moving forward. So culture was very big. Then I was looking into a good executive leadership team. So Hunter, our CEO, came from HubSpot. If you came out of HubSpot, like you're a phenomenal person kind of deal. That's kind of how I see it. Then right underneath, so my chief marketing officer, Alison Munro. I mean, I was just looking for somebody who I can learn from, like how, in case if I want to move in that direction, having experience and learning from someone, it was like very essential to me. And then she provides that on our team for everyone. Like, how do you lead? I mean, Vena has like almost 45 or 54 people on the team, something like that. So let's say 50. It's a big team. It's probably the biggest in terms of like where I was a part of ever.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you lead that machine and like how do you accomplish that? So that was a requirement. And growing. Vena stands for growing, which is like kind of funny that I kind of work out. They want to grow with like finance professional and like enable them to be better in what they're doing. But personally, like within the culture, we want to enable everyone to grow, which meant like as a leader, I have a budget to enable my team to go attend conferences. I have a budget to enable my team to like buy a book a week if we want to, right? And then like go to a book club, read. That to me was growing, and I did specifically ask, like, do we have a budget devoted that for my pod that I'm leading personally? So you grow, you can invest. This company investing in your growth, and all the boxes were like check, check, check. I was like, okay, it looks like Vena is gonna be. So let's rock and roll. That's really it.
Yeah, I love that. I wanted you to say those things because I think a lot of people still don't know how to actually look for a job. Like they're just applying for the jobs, not analyzing companies, and basically look at this as sales. You're selling yourself. So, you don't want to sell yourself to somebody, who will treat you wrongly, right? Or not the way that
Of
you
course,
want to be treated. And I'm
no.
amazed how many people don't actually look and analyze those things. Because then, if you have the right fit, you can tell them, look, this is the right fit because of this, and this. And if I get in, these are the things that I can do for you. And these are the things that I need you to do for me. So I can do those things that I promised you.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Fit is like a big thing, like within the marketing when I spoke. I think, in the United States, you have something that's called politics, right? Thankfully, I never encountered that, but that all starts with like the company culture you're part of, right?
hmm
So right now, my boss is VP of demand, Chevy. I tell her what it is. I cuss. I come the way I am, full personality. Like there is no business Tamara and like, no, this is who I am. Like I come to work as Tamara. There's no split personalities or anything, which is not the case in a lot of companies. In a lot of companies, you're like, you kind of have to like, no, you cannot be as direct. And I'm like, that must be so freaking tiring. Like I cannot even
hmm
imagine doing that. So again, I had that gig in Meltwater and like, this is such a blast. Like you can't do it all the time, right? But at least the person who I'm reporting into, like you have that sort of transparency to be like, this campaign was brutal shit. Excuse my language, but that's typically how some conversations go. And like, don't ever get me on this call, right? I wanna on this call to have objectives, like why are we going on this meeting? So you can really have like nurture that relationship. And then when it's honest, oh my God, then it's like butter. Like your work is so much easier. Like and you progress and you know you share feedback and you grow and there's no hard feelings, kind of like I guess athlete mindset, but thankfully works in my favor because my boss, call it Chevy, she we just had that gig and it's like it's so easy to work in that environment.
Nice. I love those things. And I mean, I'm listening to you, and I'm kind of the same. So
Yeah.
that sounds like a great environment to work and move forward, and also like having somebody that you can learn from someone, because a lot of people, in your position would find just a job where as CMO role, for example, when they don't have
Mhm.
anybody to learn from. But I
Yeah.
like that you saw, I need to check if I actually want to go in that position in the future. So let me learn from somebody who is over there and can share some things so I can see if that's the right fit for me or something else, or where I should go in the future. So you're in charge of the demand, let's call it like that.
Yeah.
But
It's
base
that's a big one. Let's narrow it a little bit. I can tell you exactly what brand is like. Demand is like, oh well, what portions are it? It's like, oh, they're portions, and I can speak to team culture. Just tell me what you want to know.
yeah, but I wanted to kind of get into this so we can give people kind of a perspective, because like when I look at
Mhm.
marketing in B2B companies, it's go to market and finding and showing the unfair advantage of the company and basically facilitating the sales, the whole process during the way. But let's talk about how go to market has changed from the way it was like a few years ago to the way it is
Mhm.
right now. Like when I got into B2B, it was like uh, around 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Like even 3 years ago, it was all totally different than what it was right now. People were buying different way, things were changed. So what's kind of your perspective on those things?
I will tell you, 3 years ago, I didn't even know what go-to-market is. So I think there is already like improvement in like, okay,
Yeah.
well, why is this now a topic? Because there are companies that are kind of pushing the topic, educating, and it starts with educations, right? So 3 years ago, I had zero knowledge. I'm part of this community, P community, for example. So I remember seeing like you have different topics and go-to-market or GTM was there. It's like, I had no idea what that is, like, what is this? But I'm like, okay, probably not important, the touches of marketing. So I'm like, I'm not gonna watch or educate myself in the spectrum at all. And slowly I have been like people you're connected with, right? And then education that they share. Slowly I started being looped into go to market and started to understand it. And then I'm like, oh my God, like I need to fully understand this. Like this is business 101. Like I have been missing like this entire pie of knowledge. And like really, really kind of how does go to market motion tie to marketing, right? And I think incredible marketers, especially if you start moving up in your career, you can't just think about marketing anymore. You need to think about CAC for entire business. You need to understand promotions and like how much is prospect paying, how much are you like getting out of 12-month contract. Like that's business, right? And I think go to market really kind of enables you to understand it better, not just from marketing side, but as a whole, which is the portion that I like the most.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of ties with what you already mentioned, so getting close to the revenue. And I think the whole I mean, you can see that a couple of companies moving the things in the right direction. People are following, but what I see more and more is kind of like the way we spend our time has changed. The way, like if you go like you, me, we are spending more time engaging with our peers online. It's what you mentioned inside the community is learning from others, sharing our knowledge, experience, and like less time than that actually doing our job. And if you turn it into, we now need to buy a tool. So those are the places where we will go to ask, right? To ask
Yeah.
our peers, like, what are you using for this? What is something that product that you would recommend for solving this problem? Or do you know somebody can help me with this service? That's how it goes. So kind of, it's 5 years ago, it was just Google. Basically, it
Yes.
was we go to Google and we find out everything over there. But now, like, we go to Google when there's already created demand, when people are ready to buy, and we catch them over there. And what you already mentioned, how you do the prospect for the company to work for, that's what we do, right? But if you want to be the first one they go to when we need to go before the intent and when they're not in a buying mood, and that's like 98% of the companies, 99 I would say. Like B2B LinkedIn Institute says it's like 95%. They are
Mm-hmm.
not in the market to buy right
In
now,
buying. Mm-hmm.
right? So only that part changes everything and affects every decision maker making inside the company. But at the same time, and I want to get your opinion on it, it's also like looking how many B2B SaaS companies, service providers are out there. Like it's millions of them. And to be able to differentiate, it's freaking hard. Cause like
And it's just gonna
it's
be harder,
technology.
right?
It's just gonna get more and more mad.
Yeah. That's something, okay, so from a go-to-market perspective, it's like evolution of businesses. Like I think I touched on that at some point. I mentioned, when I say I touched on it, I shared that on LinkedIn, like something that as a marketer, you have to have the short-term vision and long-term vision and understanding like,
Yeah.
okay, software is getting easier and easier to write software, which enables more companies to pop up. With more companies popping up faster, that means acquisition costs are going to increase, meaning your cost per lead for Google and LinkedIn now, that's going to be even higher. So like, what are you going to do as more money is thrown into these channels? They're kind of like OGs, what they call, right? Original. And like that's just going to drive prices up. So how are you going to combat that the next few years? So that's very important to understand from like perspective as like a SaaS business model, right? Like understanding how many more players are going to join and what's going to happen with pricing. That's one. And the secondary is like really understanding in which stage, and there are three to my knowledge, or I like really break it down that way, in which stage your company is when it comes to that go-to-market maturity level. Because your marketing plays and what you're capable of doing differentiates quite a bit from first to second, third stage. And I want people to be educated and learn more about that, because you see a lot of content. Sometimes it's correct, sometimes it's not, but like I've seen like people talking really badly, like, oh, leads are just bad. And I'm like, yeah, but leads or MQLs are not just bad for everyone. Like in the early stages of a startup, that's totally fine. That's all you need. You can, like you can talk about like ABM in a startup. Like if you don't even know your ICP and who you're going after, you can't do that. And like really having a good understanding, like educate yourself in terms of which stage of of go-to-market motion you are, your company is, that you're serving, and then match that with your efforts. And then those efforts also fall into the other buckets, right? Like ABM you can do in each stage, or it doesn't make sense. And then maybe it doesn't make sense because like you don't have ICP, or your average contract value is like really, really low. So it doesn't really make sense to do it. So understanding where all these plays fit within the go-to-market motion, super important, because it's not one size fits all. And just because somebody said, LinkedIn, this offer works really well, and you don't have a defined ICP and you're in a startup, you have no idea who you're reaching, right? Like this playbook might be given to you, but if you don't understand when are you supposed to leverage it, that's like altogether a mess. So
Yeah, and a fascinating, how many companies, how many marketers, let's call it like that, how many marketers, no matter if they are in B2B companies or in agencies, are just very good in tactics. They don't understand where each piece sits in the
yeah.
whole big picture. And for example, you mentioned leads in the early stage, those kind of things, but like a company sees that other company is doing that model, but what they don't see, because it's not visible, is that the other company has a process. What happens when they get the MQL? They have
Yeah.
a process of nurturing them. You don't have that, but you just collect
Yeah.
leads and like, I'm not converting them. Okay, that's not how you're gonna do it. And one thing that always amazes me is they don't want to listen. A lot of companies don't want to listen. They want to see it on their own example. So I usually go and say, okay, this is what will happen. You're gonna get this many MQLs. They're gonna convert into this many calls, and you're gonna get this many conversions. That's the average. And do you want to listen to me and not go into that direction? Or you want to see it on your example, spend the money, and then go into the other direction? They usually said, let's go and try now, spend the money, and then see what happens. The same team always happen. But and it's only because they don't see the bigger picture. They look at the bigger players in the niche, in the industry, and they want to do what they are doing, even though they're much higher in the development process, as you said. So,
Yeah.
like a lot of biases, I would say, you mentioned politics, are inside B2B and decision making and the way we do things.
True, to some extent. Like I try to, and that's a personal. I think this is what I told my boss, Chevy. Like I just close my ears and like just give me my revenue goal and let me fly. Close all of this mumbo jumbo around me and let me just propel through this. So you can just, if you personally choose to be out of this play, you can, I think, and you can have your leader
Mhm.
protect you from all kinds of stuff. So that's a conversation to have with your boss or your manager, however you want to call it. You brought up a great point, and I think I can give a very solid answer to your audience in terms of like how some things do not make sense if you don't have right processes or resources in place. So if you that's okay with you, I have like a shining example that I wanted to share. That's fine.
For
Okay.
sure,
One of the
it kind of goes well with the previous episode when we talk about marketing ops, the importance of processes and those kind of things.
okay.
Like Yemi Laninen was on the show, and basically she shared how like something that she has in a personal life, which ADHD, she
Uh-huh.
creates a list for everything. So it kind of translates into marketing ops, and she found her like sweet spot on creating processes inside the companies, which is exactly what she does in real life. So kind of a great continuation of that.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I tackle at Vena, and it touches on like demand capture, is more like syndication program. And let me just say right up front, there is no content syndication does not fall into this category. So we're clear. Just FYI, content syndication at Vena does not exist. That thing got canceled, I think, a year ago. It does not live anywhere within our team. When I say syndication, I think about like high lead quality programs in terms of, I will break it down in terms of channels. So G2, like people can go on Vena G2, request a demo, one thing, that's how you can capture demand. On the top of like your request a demo button that lives on your website. Captera is another thing. Trust Radius is also into that mix. Software Advice, and a few other. Here's the thing that you might see on LinkedIn, somebody rave about. Oh my God, on the top of AdWords, and you're like, contact us and request a demo, syndication, you can pour the money in and you're just gonna get your, MQLs and da 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 da. Two things that stand out right there are, if you're trying to replicate that play, the things about syndication that you might not know is, do you have the resources to act on these inbounds very quickly? And that also leads me into like time to lead average, which is very, very important. That company who you're copying this playbook might have like a team of 12 BDRs or SDRs sitting and like prioritizing this inbound somehow. So that's called process, right? Where is syndication going to live in your spectrum, and how fast can your SDR team get to them? Here's another thing you can also uncover. With syndication, the first company to inbound has the highest chances to win. So if you don't have a big enough team who can prioritize the new channel that you introduce, you're basically burning money, because if they're reaching out within 8 hours, you're out. You're never going to get inbound. Like, yes, you're going to get an MQL lead to your SDR, but the revenue will never follow because you just didn't reach out to them in a proper time. So that's example I always like. I'm really passionate about this, because like you really have to understand your resources, your processes, your BDR or SDR team, like what are they working on? Is it inbound motion, outbound motion? Well, how are they prioritizing lead? What's on the top? And then can you introduce anything new? That's the discussion you have to have. Like, do you have a bandwidth for something new for us to introduce? It's not like, here are more MQLs, whoosh. It doesn't go like that. So you really have to understand, like, does this other team that lives on the sales side, can they even handle it if we introduce? So those are the conversations you have to have. As an example, and I think we touched about, like, I'm really passionate, to those who know me, sales and marketing. I feel like I'm like a hidden salesperson within, and then I really like I understand that side really well, which when you're thinking about that, and like exactly what I just mentioned, these conversations between the two teams and tackling that as a team, two beautiful things will happen. One, when united, marketing, sales, and SDR team, like you bring more revenue, and then you understand programs better, like processes on another side, and everything kind of flourishes. So I just want to make sure that people understand and know to ask right questions, and not just think from a marketing standpoint at an MQL. Like the best marketers that I have met, they start from like creating demand, being capable to understand how to capture it, right? And then leaning into all stages. I don't know how many stages the company or your company has, like all stages through sales cycle, from what happens during inbound and how much revenue you're getting on the tail end. And also having the loop back, like hearing from your sales team, like, well, what's the quality of this and this and this and this and this? And average size of a deal of this and this and this. And you understanding ROAS, right? Like return on ad spend as well. So all kinds of good stuff that you can educate so you can be a better marketer.
Yeah, I love that. I just say that I start for closing the demand. I don't start from creating the
Yeah.
demand because like that thing is already out there. Let's try to
Yeah.
see what's already out there. And I love what you said about knowing what your team can handle. It's extremely important. So you treat every lead as the best one. I mean, of course, I'm not getting into how you separate the leads, the quality ones or
Yeah.
those. I mean, those that are potential clients that are SQLs, you need to treat them the right way so they can have the best buying experience. Because I feel like that's the one thing that you can use to separate your company from the others. How is their experience in buying from you? Because
Oh,
as we
100%.
mentioned that a little bit in a couple of few episodes, but you have marketing, then you have SDRs, then you have AI, then you have customer support, customer success, etc., etc. So it's a lot of touch points in that whole process. And one creates relationship, then the other one, then the third one comes in to close the deal. What the fuck? Kind of, if you don't have the right process to treat everybody, that's getting. And what you said also, it's I think extremely important, is the time that it takes for them to respond to a lead. It's extremely important. I work in some of the companies, and I gotta say that because I was amazed to hear that answer. It was like, I'm telling, like, guys, you are getting leads, and there was actually, we were selling something totally out of the context that, tech. So we were selling the garage doors,
Oh,
and
wow.
basically the form was like, which type of the door, which color, how much money do you have, when do you need it? Like, they give you all the answer, and they give you their phone number at the end. And then I was like, hey, you got this amount of leads in the last 3 days since we started. Did you reach out to them? Well, no, we will send them an email at the end of the week. And I'm like, you should call them yesterday. And then we checked
Yeah.
at what time they filled out the form. Most of them fill out the form in like 2, 3 at night or early in the morning, meaning the wife went to sleep and they had to do their thing about the garage door because men are buying those stuff. And somebody gave you their phone number at 2, 3 a.m. and you didn't call them right away in the morning, then what the hell are you actually doing? So
Yeah.
doesn't make sense at all. But it all leads us to the topic of alignment between marketing and sales, because you kind of touch the point. So we need to know how are our people selling, and we need to know how we can actually help them, and what marketing can do to get them the right people to talk to.
Yes.
So
Um,
t- tell me, you've been through that. You are actually now inside of it
I'm
in a
still
in a
in it. I'm never
company.
gonna be out of it. Yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned something that I like a lot, and it's this, like, nobody is actually saying how to do it, what questions should we ask, how we can create that connection, the bond between the teams, etc.
So one thing, like I kind of have like I think almost like steps built. What is it? If a founder of the company is to ask me, "What, Tamara, I understand we will yield higher revenue if we are all working as one team." Being like that's actually go-to-market motion, right? I think SDR and sales are the same thing. So marketing, SDR, sales, and customer success being that revenue team, right? If we work together, we're gonna shine. But how do you really do that? I think the first step that comes to mind as the very important is the hiring right people. So hiring a marketer who is willing to lean and into sales and devote the time to build the relationship and understand sales. Like it's curious about sales. Like Tamara sits on gone calls and I want to know what information they're sharing. Things of that, like you need to really find the right caliber of a person from a marketing, but also on the sales side. If you have somebody on the sales side who is super traditional and is not willing to be playful with marketing to identify new tactics or expand the toolbox of sales department, which I call it basics like email, phone call, LinkedIn, right? If you're not willing to expand that with someone from marketing, like call it direct mail, call it I don't know, like instead of just plain email, let's send an email with video or anything of those lines, like something that's outside of the basic toolbox for sales, that's going to also be a trouble. So if you have somebody who's traditional, that's not going to work. So you need to have a right person also from a sales or CS side who maybe did or is willing to learn and be educated and open-minded about what can marketing do for you, right? So that's one. Two is obviously the alignment starts with the shared goals. I'm not going to tap into that much because like, okay, you have to have a revenue devoted, like what percentage is marketing going to be responsible for, what percentage sales, how is expansion from CS side building into all of that, yada, yada, yada. So I'm not going to touch much about that. And then once you have those stakeholders together, obviously some cadence of like processes need to be understandable. Education portion has to start happening. This is where I'm currently with Vena, right? My VP of SDR team and my SDR leads, we have weekly like kind of meeting where we're educating each other on different processes so they understand. And we also understand, okay, in Salesforce, do you really have a view that we do have as well? Or that's different, and where this information lives. And if we send you these things about, like you said, garage door, right? Like the type of a door size, all this information, phone number, wife's name, and who to call, like we package it all up. Where do you see it? Is it in the right place? Can we elevate it? Can we build it in a way that it's very easy for you when you pick up that phone call or email, like it's simultaneous and smooth handle between marketing and sales, right? So things of that nature. And then the last portion is like asking or knowing to ask the right questions, right? One of the early discussions that I had, mid-market for our team is kind of the segment. We have SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. I started focusing on mid-market because that's where I can have the most impact in revenues, first of all. And we're still, as Vena, as a company, like serving that market really well. So I picked that. And the early conversations that I had with my leader on that side, sales leader in mid-market, I basically booked the time and asked like a bunch of questions. And some of the questions were like, walk me through all the stages, sales stages that you're currently at. So I got my walkthrough or a link to Wiki where this information lives. Then the next question is like, okay, tell me where do you have hiccups within those stages? And then the answers that I received are like between stages this and this, and stage this and this. And then I went back with my pod, like back to whiteboard, and then you're like thinking, well, how can we solve for this? What can we do? That's another thing. And then I would ask follow-up questions like, okay, what's the conversion rate between this in this stage, like understanding that funnel on the top of marketing funnel. And the biggest play is like ACV, understanding that, and understanding velocity. Velocity being like, how long does it take for you to close this deal? And give me those numbers. And how can we compare this and how we can improve upon? So not only we're giving you the right ICP, but like enabling you to close faster. So tell me what's currently slowing down that process. And let me see if we can solve for that. And some of I can share the examples, I think, as well for your audience that will be super important. That like one thing that Vena's sales team discovered and told me is like, when you get later to a stage of validation called like stage 4 for us, you really have to, the prospects at that point ask for a lot of reference calls to connect with current customers. So imagine now you're a salesperson and trying to book all these freaking calls to like current customers. And at some point, that's a lot of wasted time for the sales team. Instead of closing, negotiating, they're like trying to search for customers and to get them. So one way that we are thinking about that, solving for it, is like building a frequently asked questions. We have so many freaking like case studies from customers or panels, or within our community, we have so many series of like video content we can chop and basically get like a list of common questions that people would ask our customers and see if that can possibly answer some of these calls. So we reduce the friction from a sales side and enable them to propel or move over that hump a little bit faster. So that's just like one example that I wanted to share, so people understand, like, ask the right question, ask them about the processes, ask them how the team operates, ask them like, how do they, are these accounts given? Do they select accounts? How they select accounts? Do they go after, like, what does this process? Tell me more. How do we sell? Like, it's really that. And you really have to ask the right questions. And then from there, you can really be helpful. Once you become helpful, I always joke, you are doing your job as a marketer. If sales is knocking on your door, that's how you know you're helping. And if you're helping from a revenue source on influence, giving them the right inbounds, educating them about the different channels we can deliver you the, interest from, you're doing a tremendous job. So you have to open
Yeah.
up that conversation.
You reminded me of a question, like in a couple of situations, like sales guys ask me like, we can really do this? Because when you share them, what are some things that you can do as a marketing to kind of
Yeah.
make it easy for them to do their
Yeah.
job better? They're like, we can really do that. Like
Yeah.
one guy said, like, I could have died not knowing that.
Wow.
Because never got into those kind of situation. Like, to kind of continue what you already said, like when I start working with companies, I usually ask them all the small things when I can actually see what's happening inside the company. Meaning, if somebody fills in the form on the homepage, what happens?
Mhm.
Who's in charge? If somebody fills in the contact us form, who's in charge? What happens? When it happens? Who takes over? How do we define like sales qualified lead, sales accepted lead? What happens if we have a sales accepted lead that actually doesn't go through? How do we call it and where does it go? And not many companies know the answer to those questions, and that's perfectly fine. But it makes
Yeah.
them also think, aha, we actually need to figure out those stuff, and then they see, if this guy coming from the marketing side is asking us that, maybe we need to get all the people in the same room and start talking about those things, because if you don't know the answer to those things, you're either in the very early stage,
Yeah.
or you didn't put everybody in the same room and there are some unanswered questions for the things that are going on and happening. And
Yeah, it's totally normal. Like you said, like the stage of it, like
mhm,
you cannot anticipate in a startup to have a person who can be devoted for marketing and sales alignment like I am at Vena. It takes a team. You cover first your basics and then you layer which is again why I'm a picky, going back to the first question, just why I'm a picky in which type of a company I want to join. It's like that a company that enables me to do these things, right? So that's very important. And I'll give you one more question that marketers can ask, and I don't think a lot of them are doing. What percentage of all MQLs the marketing is sending is being disqualified by SDRT? What percent? What's that percentage? And why? And from which channels? And then you can understand. You can understand so much more.
I think 95% of the companies don't have that answer. Like,
I don't.
I can sign right now, they don't have it. Yeah, and like the channels should be the simplest one. Okay, they maybe don't have the percentage, but the channels, they should have those answers. Like, and looking at it, like even some of the simplest answer, they don't have them. Like you were talking about closing the demand and like syndication, those kind of things. Like, you gotta know, to be able to do that, you have to know how the customers are calling your product or your service. What are the names they are typing in to actually find it, because usually in a lot of situation it's not what you think, and you can only get that if you talk with them. And I have a question. So do you sometimes guys go on a sales calls with
Yeah,
sales, or you are actually just listening to the calls?
I did both. I had examples where I would ask the team to like shadow them. That's shadowing. You just kind of they answer and
Yeah.
they say, "Hey, I have a new marketer join the team. They just want to learn how a conversation goes." And then I also, it's really convenient when you have like Gong and you just log in and you listen to a sales call, right? But you can unpack so much. Like Once I remember capturing how long it took our sales team to identify and find our like G2 report where we are like showing up so well, and analyzing like what reports are really like people evaluating when they're evaluating Vena versus other vendors. I'm like, okay, well,
Hmm.
pinging the guy later, like, why did it take you so long to find this? It's like it wasn't in Seismic, and then we realize you learn, well, with Seismic, like our tagging for the content is completely off than when compared to what sales is looking for. So that's a completely different topic. I'm not even going into that. But those type of things, like you want to just be like, here you go. Why would you spend a minute searching for something? Enable them to act quickly, like help them out.
Yeah, and I think it helps a lot, like being on those calls or listening to those calls to see if actually the way they sell is
Yeah,
aligned with the way you do marketing, right? Are those things,
100%.
are you actually selling the product the same way? Because like I think this alignment comes also from that perspective. And one thing that I'm seeing like more and more often now, when the marketing role is being, let's say, increased, the
Yeah.
company recognizing more and more marketing, is that sometimes marketing creates bad presentations. That's also something that I'm seeing, and it's perfectly okay to say, aha, I was listening to the calls, like guys were trying to sell what we gave them in that way, and it didn't work. So maybe we need to get back to the drawing board.
This is discussion I can talk about this like phone and like for you for an hour because I started my career in agency and agency have this typically. It was just SEO PPC, call tracking and tracking was a necessary portion of it. So we sold on the capability of call tracking. So when you mentioned like, I remember I had like 50 or so companies that I was handling as a PPC manager. Again, my very first job out of the college. And then you listen to calls and then you remember Garage Door? I had a client that we were handling with the agency. It was kind of like truck beds. They're beds for the trucks, right? And if I didn't listen to phone calls, I would never discover how somebody from different part of US is actually calling this piece, which I never would
Hmm.
discover or bid on in AdWords if I didn't really listen to the call. So a lot of goodies or diamonds can come out of it just by like not only listening to your sales, but like listening how, like you mentioned, to your point, how are prospects really calling your product? And are you bidding on those terms? Are you in front of them? Is your content optimized for that? Like all kinds of stuff you can go, but it starts with you really like paying attention and dialing on those calls to just like get that info. To me, that's gold, and that's what I learned from early agency days. Just call tracking is like I can talk to you about call tracking for like 30 minutes straight. I love it. It's like inbounds, right? Like phone calls are like my top notch. And I'll tell you, you remember how I said 95% of companies don't have answer to this question? I can tell you that 95% of companies don't even have the right routing in place. Who are these inbounds via phone call as a channel or call as a channel coming to, and how long it takes them to answer? How many of these calls that are just business, like a revenue right there, going to voicemail to somebody on a finance team? Like it's just so bad. But that's one of my favorite things to quit, like to fix. I really love it because like people in urgency call. And like in terms of AdWords, right? You can previously in my like at Meltwater, like 10% of all AdWords revenue came from call tracking. Like call tracking. Let me step back. Phone calls is a channel. So it's like it can be hundreds of thousands of revenue being missed just because you don't have a good process and to address these inbounds, right?
Yeah, like measuring the right things and having a process to handle those things, and it's basically everything goes back to the foundation. If you set up the foundation right, then you can build it up. As the company goes, then you need to build those things again and again or rebuild them. Because like I always said, and you can probably see it now in the phase where you are in growth, like 50 people coming to the company, it's completely new company. Like for the smaller ones, 10 people coming, it's a completely new company. You need new processes. You need to renew all those other things as it grows. And as the company grows, you mentioned like different markets that you are targeting. You need different processes and to process them in a different way. And it all goes back to, does everybody in the company understand them? Does marketing understand where they are in the whole process of selling, where the sales lay and where does like the rest of it, meaning customer success lays in, and then further and further.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's something that you want people to get out of it? And like this is the main thing that you can recommend them to take away from this episode, implement it, and it will actually give them some new insights or something that will work.
Two things come
An
to
easy,
mind.
an easy question, right?
Yeah, of course. Two things really come to mind. Understanding where your company is within the, like, understanding go-to-market stages and where your company fits in. So then you can, based on those objectives, kind of propose or suggest like the channels that you should be activating. We're in a 2022. This is the planning time, end of the year. So I really, really want everyone to kind of understand that. That is one. Two is do yourself a favor and do not stop your marketing journey at MQL. Push it further, understand your closes, push through all stages of sales and really understand the full process and of how from somebody inbounding to closing the deal, how does that look like? And if you really want to win as a team, then align with your sales team in terms of BDR and sales team, align with them to work as a one team instead of constantly having that point the fingers. We gave you enough of MQLs, but you didn't act on it. And they're like, well, you didn't give us really what we were looking for, so we didn't act on it. La, la, la. So work, right? That alignment is a lot of work and it takes time and patience and building the trust. So invest in that because the revenue will follow if both teams or all teams, revenue teams are aligned.
I love that. I love that. It's one thing that I always said, even for the somebody that starts running the ads, like your conversion should be the last one because like LinkedIn ads or Google ads or Facebook ads or whatever the platform is, the platform needs to see the final result, what you want out of it as a final result, final conversions. They need to see it. You don't need to go for it, but it needs to see it so it can actually optimize everything based on that. And it's the same thing in the business. You see the final result and you optimize everything, reverse engineer to get to that point.
Yeah, again, going back to that disqualification number or the question for the SDR team, if that's the process that your business is running, like you can give your sales team hundred of ads or inbounds coming from the social channels. Let's call it LinkedIn, right? But if they are disqualifying 90% of it, you're never gonna see any revenue out of it. So you're just burning money. Another thing is like syndication. I think I mentioned those different channels that fall into it. There's such a thing like you pay high price for those inbounds, right? And then if your SDR team is disqualifying them, you're burning money. But you also need to understand that you can educate them enough to tell, hey, if this is disqualified, we can ask these channels, like software device example, like to get the reimbursement if this inbound didn't really fit to what was needed. So then you can be back to zero, but you don't need to lose $300, $400, $500 inbound, right? So it's like you just make better decisions and with that become a better marketer.
Totally agree. Tamara, tell me and the people where they can find more information about you and continue the conversation.
Yeah, feel free. I always say my inbox is open. If I learn from other people and things like this, we brainstorm and chat, and the point is to learn. So my inbox is open to everyone who has questions. That's number one. You can find me on LinkedIn. This is typically my channel. I love it, and I don't deviate from it for anything professionally related. That's it.
Yeah, guys, make sure that you connect with Tamara. follow her, go ahead and invite her comments and, comment section, add some value. But before that, go back to the beginning of the episode, listen to what we were saying. She said a lot of things in that one small gem she got into. I didn't want to break it down. She said a lot. So you go back to that point, analyze all of these things, then go back to her and ask her about the details, about specific
Yeah.
things. And Tamara, thank you again for spending an hour with me
Okay.
here talking about marketing, about sales, about alignment. And guys, for you, thank you for being with Funky Marketing Show. And as I always say for the end, make sure that you keep it funky.